and welcome to the 21 Days Face Your Fears online challenge. I am Bristena transformation facilitator, energy therapist and writer, and my mission is helping people heal their past in order to be able to live the life of their bliss. I'm super excited to be your host on your personal journey to growth, empowerment, and fearlessness through the power of community. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Chris Paradox. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Bristena. Hi, everyone.
Chris Paradox is a one-legged existentialist stand-up beat poet, inspiration engineer, and Ikigai Coach, and he helps people to live life on their own terms while making their corner of the world a better place to live. And I absolutely adore Chris Paradox. He's been mentoring me, and I love his inspirational dialogues and conversations with people. You're someone that I look up to and I've learned a lot from. So thank you very much for joining us, Chris.
It's an honor and a pleasure, and the feeling is very mutual. And you got that introduction exactly right. It's almost as if I wrote it and gave it to you.
Awesome. Okay, Chris, I would like you to tell us a little bit, maybe a summary of your story, how you ended up living in a park under a tree for a couple of months, and now how you're doing coaching with thousands of people. I'm really curious. Maybe our viewer wants to know more about this.
Okay. I could do that, or I could answer the question as part of the questions you're going to ask me about
Oh,
fearlessness,
okay.
because
Yeah.
it's such a long
Yeah.
story. I don't want to take up too much time, but
Awesome.
I
Let's
think
do that.
people will hear the story in the process of the interview.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. So let's begin then with your greatest fear. What was your greatest fear and how did you overcome it?
Excellent. You see, so that's the start of my story.
Awesome.
So my greatest fear was um, I'll never make my life work. I was 34, 35. I'd achieved quite a lot in business. I was managing director of a business in media buying with about 40 staff and 3 offices. I was earning 70 grand a year. I was quite successful. I was married, had 2 teenage boys. Um, but I had an experience where I realized that the life I was living, it wasn't my life. I was living the life that my parents wanted me to live and that culture wanted me to live and I was supposed to live, but actually it didn't feed my heart and soul and dreams at all. And so my fear was, oh my God, what have I been doing with my life? Like, what have I been doing with my life? Like, what is my life? If I were to die tomorrow, what did I do? And so that was the biggest fear. It was, I'll never make my life work. I've made a mess of my life. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay. So what happened after that?
so, you know, I dealt with that fear by facing it, I suppose. And I guess that's my response to the question, what's the best way to deal with fear? In my
You
experiences,
just faced it.
yeah. And in my case, what that looked like was over the period of about a year and a half, moving away from the life that I'd created because my heart wasn't in it anymore. And it was difficult because on the one hand, again, I'm going to talk about joy as a response to fear or a way of dealing with fear. And so I was fortunate to have a spiritual experience which me with joy that allowed me to face that fear by going to live under a tree in a park and sell the big issue for about 7 months in 2002 with the intention of answering that question. Okay, I haven't made my life work. I don't know how to make my life work. Universe, God, spirit, please show me the purpose of my life. Show me why I'm here. And if you show me, I will do it. Like, just show
Wow.
me what I'm supposed to do here.
Wow.
And I was fortunate enough, as I said, to have enough joy to face that fear and literally give it all up. No money, no safety net, just go and live under a park and sell the big issue and try to survive as basically a bum in a this person living in the park. And the result of that was finding my purpose, finding a life that actually does seem to work and I do enjoy and does seem to follow my heart and soul and what have you. So obviously my personal experience tells me no matter how big the fear, the only way really to deal with it is to face it.
Wow, that's an absolutely brilliant story. And tell us a little bit, how does your life look right now after
Uh,
all that, all those searching and seeking, and what's your purpose and how you're living it and embodying it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that happened in 2002. It's now 2016. So it's taken me 14 years, I have to be honest. I've had an amazing time, but lots of ups and downs. And I made lots of mistakes and I got a lot of things wrong and it wasn't perfect. But I've lived an incredibly magical, adventurous life that I couldn't have dreamt of.
Wow.
I feel quite blessed in that regard. And where I'm at now, um, I feel I've integrated the most important lessons and have grown in the ways that I needed to grow, most of the ways that I needed to grow. And now it feels like I'm experiencing the rewards. I keep saying I'm in the reward phase.
Mm,
uh, I'm just experiencing the rewards of facing, living through facing your fears. And I always say that the magic is on the other side of your fear. So my life has a lot of magic in it, not like massive peak experiences necessarily, but the everyday magic of like having really loving connections with
yeah,
people
yeah.
and doing really good work with people and experiencing growth and change and love. Like that magic, I have a lot of that. So I'm very blessed.
Very beautiful. It's indeed very great to practice gratitude. And I've noticed it was a common thread in the conversations I had so far with the people I've interviewed, that we ended up talking about how many of us nowadays want to leave our 9 to 5 job because it's not deeply fulfilling us. It provides us with financial security, but many of us do not find our passion, or our heart is not in what we're doing, and we like to break free from that. And therefore, how would you go about dealing with a person, helping someone who's trying to break free from their conventional job or the lifestyle that they've created so far, and simply following their heart and finding what their truest passion is? And maybe you'd like to talk about your Ikigai framework.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, of course, that's obviously, so that was my journey. I'd reached the age of about 35, very unhappy in my career and what have you. And I did my crazy thing of going to live in the park. Fortunately, nobody else has to do that. I always say that to people. And obviously, because that's my experience, that's what I do for a living now. I help people to do exactly that, I call it living life on your own terms. And for me, the best framing for that is the Japanese concept of Ikigai. And your Ikigai basically means that which you love, that which you're good at, that which the world needs, and that for which you can be paid.
Okay.
And it brings together, I used to do work on helping people to find their purpose, as I did. And that was good and it was great and it was helpful. But you can know your purpose but not be able to make a living at it,
Yeah.
or you can know your purpose and not know how to make it good for the world. So that's why the Ikigai to me was so exciting. I discovered it about a year ago because it brings it all together, and it integrates all those essential elements. You need to make a living. You need to have time to live your life as well. You need to enjoy your life. So it's bringing together purpose, mission, passion, and profession. And I also discovered that when I worked with people, either with one-off workshops or courses or coaching programs, there were I was able to help people make changes in their life and transform their life and move towards finding their purpose and making a living. But what happened is that over time, people's daily lives, their habits, the way their limiting patterns, etc., would tend to overwhelm the changes and the transformations that happen,
Yeah.
and they would kind of regress to the mean. They would go back, maybe at a higher level, but they would go back to their old way. And I just knew that the only way really I could help people was if I was with them
Yeah.
uh, consistently, and also that even if I was with them consistently, unless they had a supportive environment
Yeah.
to make those changes, it's very hard to do it on your own. You need people to you know, there's a wonderful quote: "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time
Yeah,
with." And I
absolutely.
think
Yeah.
everyone knows that is true. There's a true, it has the ring of truth.
Yeah.
And if you're surrounded by people who, you know, you've come together as part of that life that isn't fulfilling you and isn't satisfying you, the chances are they're going to be in a similar life, and so they are not really going to believe, or maybe they're afraid to, that you can transform and
Yeah.
that you can change your life. So I decided to focus purely, instead of coaching and workshops and what have you, on mastermind groups.
Okay.
And so I started the Ikigai mastermind group, and now we have 13 people in the group, in the mastermind group. And a mastermind is just that environment. So it's an environment of people who are supportive, your peers. They all want the same thing. Everyone wants their Ikigai. And we communicate once a month in a video conference on Google Hangout. Everybody has a one-to-one session with me per month of 2 hours. But probably most importantly, we're all parts of a WhatsApp group.
Okay.
So basically, we're in contact with each other
Haha.
every day.
Awesome. Awesome.
And so we really become the 5 people we spend the most time with. And because of that, the magic of the group consciousness, just of people talking, supporting, giving each other advice, sharing their experiences, it's magic. It's completely magic. So we've just got this lovely little bubble of people overcoming that, you know, living life on their own terms, finding a way to make a living doing what they love and not have to work 40 hours a week.
Oh my God, I love that. Well done, Chris. It's an amazing initiative and project that you're involved in. And basically, what I'm doing with the Face Your Fears challenge is the same thing. It's bringing people together in a community, safe, supportive network. We're helping each other overcome our fears. So I feel like there's more and more community projects and ideas cropping up here and there. And the more we bring people together, the more we can grow together and support each other, because it's inevitable. We're all in this together. We're not alone anymore. We've never been.
Aho, aho, I
Oh,
couldn't agree more.
awesome, Chris. Okay, so what is your number one strategy when you help yourself or others overcome fears? If you can give us some practical tips.
I certainly can, yes. So my number one strategy, and this is the beauty of it, is that I have no philosophy about fear, because, you know, the part that tries to think about it too much is driven by fear. You know, our individual ego. Basically, I've got a saying that basically, fear is what it feels like when your ego is in control,
Yeah.
and love is what it feels like when your soul is in control.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of that simple. So fear, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, your ego is trying to look after your individual form. It's trying to look after your body. It's trying to survive. It's trying to look after itself. Nothing bad. And obviously, a lot of fear is good. Any fear that's naturally about damage that might happen to
Yeah.
you, whether physically or emotionally, you should be afraid about that, and you should listen to that fear. So fear is not bad. But the context that I understand that we're talking about is when fear stops you from doing something
Yeah.
that you would like to do in your
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
or in any situation. That's when fear is counterproductive.
Yeah.
And but not even counterproductive, but actually the fuel for growth. It's the fuel for growth. It's what you have to face in order to grow. So my number one strategy for facing with fear is facing it.
It's just that. Just face it. Just do it. Nothing else.
There isn't anything else. Like your, I've always got this thing, is that your fear is at least as smart as you are. Yeah, you can't outsmart your own fear, because your fear sits usually in your blind spots. It sits in the dark places you don't want to look at. By definition, if you're afraid of it, you don't want to look at it. So it kind of knows your secrets. So if you try to outthink your fear or figure it out, or I know there's lots of good techniques, and I know there's a lot of good writing about fear. I'm not denying all of it, but from what I've read and what I've experienced is that if I get into a place of trying to outthink it, uh, I just find myself in a labyrinth. But if I just face it, bang, like I'm there in the moment with my fear, and I just see it for what it is. It's just something that needs to be there to show me um, that actually it's all about my soul, and it's all about love, and it's all about the moment.
And then when you see yourself doing something that you thought you were incapable of doing before, when you're in that moment and like, wow, I'm growing so much. I'm doing something I thought it was impossible before, and then that
Exactly.
feeling is just
There's nothing
wow.
better.
Yes,
There's
nothing
nothing
better.
better than literally. That's what I always say. It's like there's nothing better than to be able to enjoy something you couldn't enjoy before because you were
Yeah.
afraid of doing something. So to give you an example, about 3 years ago, I had the experience of being afraid of talking to people on the tube.
I was just thinking about that because I wanted to ask you about that. I remember you were telling us about
Yeah.
this.
In terms of my strategy for dealing with fear, this is how I discovered it. About 3 years ago, I went on a date and I was late for the date, and I ended up slowing down because I didn't want to arrive to the date like all rushed and flustered. And while I was slowing down, going on the tubes like in slow motion, I had a little mini mystical experience because I experienced the moment, like fully experienced the moment. And in that state, I was riding in the lift at Hampstead. A group of people got on the lift and we were going up the lift to get off the tube. And you know that funny thing, like when people get in lifts, no one talks to each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And spontaneously said in this state of kind of just mystical joy, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how no one talks to each other on the lift? And everyone just burst out laughing quite naturally because everyone knows that thing,
Yeah.
and we all laugh. And and everyone started talking about it. And by the time we got to the top of the lift doors open, we were like, "Oh, bye! Have a nice time at the restaurant. Oh, bye! Have a nice time at the cinema."
Oh.
We let each other. It was a nice little magical moment. And so what happened was is that a few days later, I got on the tube and I remembered that and I thought, oh, I was standing on the tube and it was like a middle of the day, so it wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty. And I wanted to just say, hello, everyone. Isn't it funny how people don't talk to each other on the tube? And as I went to say it, massive fear, like massive fear. I felt so afraid. I didn't realize it, but I felt so afraid to say it in front of everyone like that. And it made me realize that a few days ago, when I was in a joyful, mystical place, there was no fear at all.
Mm.
And now, when I'm in my normal place, there was massive fear. Like, and I actually got really angry with myself because I thought, I'm a public speaker. I've been a poet for years. I've spoken in front of stages and audiences for years and years and years and years and years. But I'm afraid of people. Like the worst thing that could have happened to me. This is what I mean about fear is only the ego. The worst thing that could have happened to me if I spoke to people on the tube is that people ignored me or laughed at me. Do you know what I mean? Nothing else. No one was going to punch me in the face or arrest
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
But I was terrified. I was terrified. I couldn't believe it. I was like, why am I terrified? And I just had this realization, it's only my ego. It's only my ego doesn't want to look bad. I'm afraid of what people are going to think about me. That's all it was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just was like, oh my God, that is terrible. If that's true, I'm a complete fraud. How can I be an inspiration engineer? How can I be an inspiration engineer if I'm afraid of being embarrassed talking to people? Like
Oh
it
my
just
god.
it
You're
just
so funny, Chris. and
so I
then
just
and then what
so I
happened?
what happened was, so remember I said that you can't outwit your fear, and I realized in that moment I realized I had to do it. I had to make a practice of facing that fear when I got on the tube or the bus or was out in the world. I had to. I just had to. But I also knew that my fear would stop me from doing it. Do you see what I mean? I
Yeah,
also knew that already my fear would try to stop
yeah,
me.
yeah.
So I had to figure out a way to outwit my fear. And I tried to keep it as simple as possible. And I just said, okay, every time I travel, because I lived in Crouch End at the time, and I used to have to get a bus, then a tube to where I was going, and then a tube and a bus back. So I had 4 opportunities every time I traveled. So I said, I promised myself every time I traveled, I must do it once, like just once, every time I travel. That was just a promise I made to myself. And so what happened the first day I went traveling, I went to the bus stop and the bus came and I thought, no, I'm not going to do it now. I'll do it the next time. Then I got to Finsbury Park Station, got on the tube and thought, I'm not going to do it now. I'll do it the next time. And went where I was going, came back, got on the tube. And I thought to myself, if I put it off to the last chance, like if I put it off to the bus, I'm not going to do it. So I just thought, I've got to do it now. So I just remember I just took a deep breath, massive fear, and I just went, hello, everyone. Please don't be alarmed. I'm not a beggar. I'm not a busker. I don't want your money, but I do like to challenge social taboos. And I think it's really weird that on London transport, especially on the tube, people don't talk to each other and or look at each other or make eye contact, and we're all human, and I'm sure we all naturally do that.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd say good morning everyone and see if I could get everyone to say good morning back. Good morning everyone. And most people said good morning back. A few people laughed and said thank you, and a few people come up and shook my hand and said thank you on the way out. But the whole time I was, after I did it, I would literally was in a magical place. It was like the
Wow.
whole tube turned magic, and everyone was smiling and looking at each other, and it was just magic. And I just felt this joy, this relief of overcoming the fear, and I just did it every day. And I've been doing it basically every day for 3 years now. I sing and dance on the tube and sing and dance at Asda and the train station, on the bus, it's everywhere I go. And now it's a way of life. But it was only through that little practice, the first month or so, first couple of months, it was massive fear every time. But I just told myself, but I know that when I do it, it's always magic. So I
Mm.
just kept doing it. And the magic just kept happening. And after a while, it was like, it's ridiculous to be afraid of this. It's just ridiculous.
I love this story is so perfect for everyone who has this fear, but they know there's so much potential in them that they want to manifest and that are aware that there's so much magic at the end of our fears. So I think this story is the most illustrative I've ever heard about someone facing their fears and really keeping to the practice, sticking to it, and pushing themselves, even though you knew that your fear was gonna prevent you from doing that, but you still pushed yourself and you managed in the end. And then so much magic unfolded. It's brilliant, and I love it so much, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So, in your view, how does fearlessness relate to personal growth and empowerment?
Great question. Great question. Like in my experience with working with people, coaching and stuff like that, I have to humble myself with the realization that I can't help anyone that isn't willing to face their fear. I can't, like, no matter how good I am at what I
Yeah,
do, if they're not willing to face their fear, it doesn't make any difference.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so at the heart of any attempt to all growth, all learning. If you're learning a musical instrument, if you're learning a new subject, if you're meeting a person in relationship, all kind of learning and growth require courage, like to face your fear. Um, Aristotle has a great quote: "Courage is the greatest of all virtues because it allows all others." You can't be loving without courage. You can't
mm,
be patient without courage. You can't be compassionate without courage.
mm.
You can't be any of the things you want to be unless you are prepared to face your fears. So, yeah,
Yeah, and this reminded me of another quote by E. Cummings. He was saying that to be true to yourself in a world or a society that is constantly trying to mold you into something that you're not is a constant battle. And I think courage is what is needed to be true to yourself in a society which criticizes you, judges you, tries to fit you in their pre-established little boxes.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also
So
the word courage.
daily life, just being authentic takes courage. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly.
if courage is the word we use, really, courage just means facing your fears. It's not actually a big deal. It's just that little thing of saying a fear is there, and either deciding no, 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 I'm not going to go there, or okay, I'm going to face it. That's all it is.
And etymologically speaking, courage comes from French courage, which means from the heart.
I always think of it as heart rage,
Heart rate.
and that's why when I had that fear on the tube, and I realized I was afraid of people, and I realized it made me a fraud. It was rage. There literally was a rage in my heart that I was afraid of that. And it was that rage that I'm not going to be afraid of that just made me do it.
And it comes from your heart, whereas your fear is coming from the ego. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Um, one big fear that I myself have managed to overcome and work through was fear of being judged, fear of exposing myself, fear of how people might perceive me, you know. Um, and I think as a public speaker and performer, you must have worked through this as well. So, how would you recommend anybody who is experiencing this fear of being rejected or fear criticism or judgment to go about handling that fear?
You've got some great questions. That's why I was really looking forward to this interview, because they're really great
Awesome.
questions.
We're very much in tune.
Yeah, because well, you know what it's like. If somebody asks you a good question, it makes you think about and understand things in a way that you hadn't before.
Yeah.
So like, I'm learning by trying to answer your questions. That's why I love them. Um, yeah, how would I go about it? Yeah, I suppose again my experience, um, because I started writing and performing poetry when I was living in the park. It was very organic. So, and I was already 35. So a lot of people have something to say from quite a young age. But when you're young, sometimes people don't listen to you. So you have to get older to get the chance to really say it to people. And by that time, you might have had some negative feedback from your parents or someone that's given you this anxiety and thinking, what are people going to think? Uh, I was in a weird situation because I was already 35 and I'd already made a life. And so this poetry was brand new. I'd never written a poem before until the age of 35. And when I first started doing it, I did it when I just stopped people in the park where I was living and said, would you like a poem? And if they said yes, I would just do the poem. And the initial responses I got were people crying and saying, thank you. I've never had anyone do that. So I was lucky. I got just genuinely good responses. So I never had an anxiety about it. And then I would do it when I sold the big issue. If somebody bought the big issue, I would do them a poem. And usually they would respond well. And so before I actually performed on stage, I didn't know how bad I was. I literally didn't. I had no self-consciousness about the flaws in my delivery and my poetry because it was all very innocent, like a child. So when I first went to do it on stage, actually I did it at a really hardcore punk open mic called the Foundry that was full of anarchists and punk and quite rough people in East London. And I was doing poet about spirit and love and God and if I'd have thought about the crowd and my types of poet, I never would have done it. I would have been terrified because I would have thought there's no way they're going to like this. They're going to think I'm an idiot. They're going to think I'm crazy. I would have thought all of those things, but I was so innocent and blind and stupid. I just did it anyway. And actually, they loved it.
Of course they
And
did. You're brilliant.
but fear would have told me something different. So,
Yeah, yeah.
to the question, it's the same answer. It's like if you have those anxieties about what people are going to think about you, the only way to experience the truth and overcome that fear is to do it anyway. It's just to do it. And basically, you kind of have to steel yourself and say, I'm maybe I'm going to be judged. Maybe I'm going to be criticized. Maybe people are going to perceive me in a way that I don't want them to perceive me. Maybe those things are going to happen. But actually, all that matters is, are you enjoying expressing yourself? That's the thing. That's all you have to worry about. If you're enjoying expressing anything, honest to God, I can tell you this: it doesn't matter what anyone. I've basically performed. It hasn't happened for a long time, but I've basically performed at strange places who weren't expecting spoken word or poetry, where people were into something else, and they basically ignored me. And a few were like, what's going on here? But I was having such a good time. It was one of my favorite gigs ever. Do you know what I mean? So ultimately, it's only about the joy of expression. But at the same time, it's good to feel the pain of criticism, feel the pain of judgment, just so you can experience your fear. Like, that's the fear. It's like, and then you realize, well, actually, okay, it's not that bad. It's just people's opinion. It's actually got nothing to do with me. And then you can experience that actually this thing you were so afraid of is actually puny. It's puny compared to the feeling of expressing yourself authentically. It's so puny. And then you just, I realize what it's all about. And then you just get into doing it because you enjoy doing it. And then you will find less and less criticism and judgment, because it's almost impossible to criticize and judge and project onto someone who's genuinely shining and expressing their thing. It's almost
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah. And then the joy that you experience just because you're expressing your truth and sharing your wisdom or whatever comes through you is I think much more authentic and even bigger and much more valuable to us compared to the joy we get from appraisal or approval or
Yeah.
applauses. Because in my experience, I'm talking from experience. A few nights ago, I went on stage and it was the best performance I've ever did. Only when I truly allowed myself to just be myself and surrender all my fears of how people are going to perceive me. And it was the best moment ever. I was so happy about it. And thank
Yay!
you. Yeah, and also doing this challenge, it was something that even though my heart was telling me to do this Face Your Fears challenge, my mom was like, "Oh, am I big enough to do this? Is such a big project for me. How can I do this? Blah blah blah." You know, the inner critic, small monkey mind, who's always doubting and worrying and blah 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 blah. But if your heart tells you to do that, you just do it, and everything will unfold in such a beautiful way that you will be simply mind blown, and then you're gonna go with it.
Exactly, beautiful. I'm so happy for you about that brilliant performance. I know what that feels like. That is so awesome. Well done, well done, well
Thank
done.
you.
Congratulations. And so I will give a practice. So yeah, it's easy enough for me to say just face your fear, and I realize it might be quite annoying to hear that because it's too simple. Do you know what I mean? But I will give it. There's a specific exercise of practice which is really good for what you just described there. That inner critic and how it can doubt you. So here's a practical tool for all the viewers that really I've found, I've done it many times in workshops, really powerful. Everyone seems to benefit from it. Is so what you do is you spend 2 minutes writing down in a kind of stream of consciousness way everything, the typical things that your personal inner critic says to you, because for everyone it's slightly different. It might be, oh, you're not smart enough, you should have worked hard at school, or you're not clever enough, or you're not good looking enough, or you're not eloquent enough, or you're not funny enough, whatever it might be. Writing them down, writing it all down for 2 hours. So literally the worst, but the beating yourself up voice. And then what you do is you choose some kind of voice that to you sounds ridiculous. So it might be a game show voice, or a really camp queer voice, or like a sort of phone sex female, supposedly sexual. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just something that you find ridiculous, or a funny accent, and you read it out in that voice, uh, and it has the effect of taking the claws out of your inner critic. So when you hear it in your mind, you hear it in that ridiculous voice, and you can say, "Oh, that's not something I need to listen to." And so for me, it's like the game show host. So one of my friends did it in the workshop, and she said, "You can I swear?
um,
No, I won't. I won't. Okay,
Uncensored.
okay, you messed up again. You always get it wrong. Like that." And she did it like a game show host. And she made her voice like a really cheesy game show host. And now when she hears it, she hears the game show host.
Yeah, oh my god, that's very efficient. I'm definitely gonna apply that. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing with us this exercise, Chris. It's amazing. And I found indeed that bringing humor makes us realize that we're taking ourselves too seriously sometimes.
exactly.
Oh my god, thank you, Chris. You're one of the most inspirational people I meet. Just your whole energy and vibration makes me always like, oh, it's possible. Everything is possible. Like living with almost just trying to survive in the park, and now doing all these amazing things that you're doing now is absolutely brilliant. And I hope our viewers would like to contact you or get in touch with you. So if there is any way you'd like to share how people to contact you.
Sure, yeah. So chrisparadox.com, CHRISPARADOX.com. That's my website, and the Ikigai Mastermind and other things that I do are on there. Or you can email me at paradoxchris@gmail.com. PARADOXCHRIS at gmail.com.
Thank you very much, Chris. It was a rich and very illuminating exchange. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you start applying some of the tips and techniques we talked about in your daily lives when you're facing your fears. If you enjoyed this video, please share it on your social media and let your friends know you're participating in this amazing challenge for fearless warriors. Join my YouTube channel, YouTube Journey to Bliss, and sign up on the link below to get your free Bliss Blueprint with the 3 stages of radical transformation from within. I hope you enjoyed it and see you next time. Bye bye!